All right. So anyway, Gary Erickson, I've known Gary a long time. He's one of our sponsors at MITech News. He's gosh, so much experience. He now, well, he's from Michigan, but he bounces back and forth between Colorado and Florida. I assume you're in Florida. Colorado would be a little cold this time of year, right?
You got it. Yep.
Okay. And he's the managing partner for Executive Search Partners, which does just like it sounds, executive searches for the CIOs or the CISOs. For those folks out there in tech world, they know what that all means. The folks that actually run the technology network at various companies or protect them against the bad guys. And so Gary gets a lot of resumes. I think you said you get like 1,000 resumes for any particular job that you post. Is that an accurate number?
No, I have some of, I've had jobs where I've gotten up to 1,500 resumes. The typical number of resumes we get for a posted job is 200 to 300, which is still a huge number.
It is. And so what we were trying to do last week, and he had some technical difficulties, so we invited him back this week, is some of the misnomers about what should be on a resume. Everybody has their own theories about what should be there, and Gary's going to talk about what really should be there. And let's work on that first, Gary. So let's start that off. What are some of the things that people think should be on a resume that you don't think they really should put there?
Well, the first thing is length. You know, there's this whole, and you're going to get even the experts disagreeing with this, but how long should your resume be? It should be no more than 2 pages long. No, I think it depends on the job you're going for. We typically like resumes that are 3 to 3.5 pages long. If they're longer than that, they are definitely too long. If they're 2 pages, people try and squeeze things. They reduce the size of the font. They always don't describe every position they've had. They don't talk about community activities and recognitions and awards because they're cutting that all off. I like to see all of that stuff on a resume. I like to find out about the whole person from a professional basis and a personal basis when we interview them for a senior level IT position. So resumes should be more than 2 pages long and probably no more than 3 to 3.5 pages long.
What about the idea of putting keywords at the top of a resume so that the resume screening bots don't reject you? Do you think that's necessary?
Well, I think one of the myths about when you apply to a job is the reason I didn't hear back is because the resume bots, artificial intelligence software has rejected me because they couldn't tell who I really am on the resume. No, it's senior level jobs, and let's call senior level anything from, say, senior manager on up, senior manager, director, vice president, CIO, CISO, something like that. Real people screen the resumes. They don't go for keywords. They primarily look for most recent position, industries that you're in, titles, scope of responsibilities, and then they also look at career progression, which then says don't give them too short a resume, but don't overwhelm them with words. So get rid of in the middle of your resume on the first page. I see a lot of people put in a bunch of keywords, hoping the bots will screen them in for a position. That's not going to work because it's a human being that looks at it.
What should be at the top of the resume?
Well, you start with the very first part of the resume is usually a professional summary, which is no more than 1/8 of the page, 4 or 5 sentences that describes who you are professionally. So, for example, senior IT executive with 30 years of experience, global experience in the manufacturing, automotive, and healthcare industries, responsible for teams of, 75 people in an annual budget of 120 million. That's all you really need at the top of a resume. You don't need to talk about exceptional leadership, creative skills, innovation, things like that. The second part of the resume, right under that we're recommending, is that you basically want to customize each resume for the position that you're applying for. A lot of people will say, well, I send a generic resume and a cover letter. And then I ask them, how often do you read a cover letter? And they say, well, I never read one. I said, well, why do you expect the people that you're applying to a job to read the cover letter? So we're recommending that right under this professional summary, you insert a short section that says qualifications for position of whatever it is you're applying for, and maybe even the name of the company, and then list 4 or 5 dot points about why they should consider you for that position. And those dot points should include industry, scope of responsibility, and in the IT space, often key technologies that you deploy.
You often hear people say when they apply for a job and never hear back, I applied for this job online and no one got back to me. That means they're an inconsiderate company or an inconsiderate recruiter. How is that a misconception?
Well, as we went back to the top of this discussion, we talked about the number of resumes that people get. You post a job online, CIO, director, VP of just about any position, and that company is going to get hundreds of resumes. And a typical internal recruiter or a recruiter like us is typically recruiting for several jobs at a time. We just don't have time to go back and an individual reply to each individual. We also put in the job postings out there. These are the qualifications. And we don't really say don't apply if you don't have those, but we get an awful lot of people that apply for jobs that they're not qualified for. I can do the job. Trust me. Just hire me. Okay. My answer to that when somebody tells me that is I say, look, we usually present 6 to 10 people who meet all of the qualifications for the job. How am I going to be able to tell the company that you're a better qualified person for that position than somebody that is obviously on paper more qualified because they have the background, the industry, the scope, the technology that the company is looking for?
So should somebody put the salary range they're looking for on a resume?
I don't think so. A lot of times the position posting will have the salary range on there, but you can't ask, in most states, you can't ask, what are you making today? And I agree with that, but you can ask somebody what they're looking for. And that's what we typically do. And we know what the company's willing to pay, and there's usually a range. And that range is typically based on experience. If you're less experienced, but they like you, they may pay you less. If you're more experienced and they like you, they may pay you more. So that's why you have a salary range. So we always ask people what they're looking for. And when we present a candidate, we tell the client, this is the salary and any other compensation like bonus and stock and et cetera that the person is looking for.
How about the idea that that is not what you know, it's who you know that counts? Is that a misconception these days?
A little bit of a misconception. So if you're a person trying to hire somebody, your job is dependent on how good a job that person does for you. So you're not going to just hire anybody, no matter how well you think of them. If you don't think they have the background for the job, you're not going to hire them. But if I know somebody, and I've worked with somebody before, and I know that they might be interested, I'd be more inclined to talk to that person. A lot of times, when somebody's looking for a job, use networking. Network with people, get people to try and recommend you, but also make sure when they recommend you, they tell the person they're talking to why you're qualified. So our pithy saying is, it's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know who knows what you know. I think that's clever. All right. So you got to have both. You got to have connections, networking, and you got to be qualified for the position, and you've got to be able to explain to somebody why you're qualified for that position.
So what are some of the really in-demand jobs right now? You don't have to be real specific, but in general, what are the top jobs that these folks are looking for?
Well, if you're looking for, first, I think the most in-demand jobs today are individual contributor jobs, people who have a really strong background, like a security analyst or a programmer who knows a specific language and has the skills and the background. And I think those are the hardest ones to find. When you get to a senior level position, such as a director of IT or vice president of IT or CIO, people are looking for people who are qualified in that industry, in that position. And it varies based on the time of the year, what positions are open. So it seems like it's more time of year dependent than anything. It's also economy dependent on what jobs are out there. So I'm not really answering your question directly, because it changes on a regular basis. Now, if you want to ask a follow-up on that, maybe a more specific example, I certainly can try and provide one.
What is the hottest job right now that these companies are looking to fill?
Usually, that's hard to say. Usually director level of IT jobs, occasionally there's CIO jobs. It's more director level / vice president of IT jobs. The jobs that are in more demand are people who understand the application side. So in other words, I work with the business to understand how to implement brand new ERP system, for example. Or Matt, I know that, and Mike, you've both been involved in Industry 4.0. That's highly technology dependent. Those kind of people with that kind of knowledge and that kind of background who understand how to apply software to solving business problems are the kind of people that are in most demand. The second most demand are people who understand cloud, infrastructure operations and security around the cloud space.
Okay, so we've got just a couple of minutes left here. Tell us about how people should act in interviews. Should they act like the interview is all about them, the applicant, or how to handle that?
Yeah, I've got two rules I tell people when they interview. The first rule is the more the other person talks, the better you look.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is that, if you're the interviewer, you want to get through your series of questions so you learn about the person, and the more the person talks, the less information you're going to get. And a typical question is, tell me about yourself. And when I ask somebody that and they start going into this long explanation, well, I started in school when I was 15 and I really got interested in building computers, right? No, I don't want to hear that. I just want to hear, tell me about yourself, who you are professionally now. The other saying that we tell people that reinforces that is remember, the interview is not about you. And most people say, wait a second, no, I'm the one being interviewed. Yes, but the interviewer during the first 20 minutes of the interview has their agenda to get through. Let them run the interview. Let them ask the questions. Give them short, focused answers. If they want more details, they answer them. They'll ask them. And then after you get through the first 20 or 30 minutes of the interview, you get more into an interactive space where you can start asking them questions about the job and the position.
Okay. And so now that you got everybody all slathered up, they want to work with you, Gary. I know you got tips on your website. Where do they go to find out all those tips and or submit their resumes?
On our website, we've got a document called 12 Steps for a Highly Successful Job Search that lists every idea, thought, hint, whatever that we've ever learned in our 20 years of being in business. We've organized that into a IT-friendly focus because it's almost reads like if you're programming an application. www.execsearchpartners.com.